Welcome to this edition of the B2B Engagement Podcast. I'm your host, Gavin Finn with Kaon Interactive, and today's topic is fulfilling the customer's unmet need through coopetition. We're so privileged to have a real industry expert with us today, Tola Olorunnisola, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Advanced Lab Services at Avantor. Welcome, Tola.
Thank you. Thanks, Gavin. Appreciate you having me here. I'm really honored.
It is great to have you with us. And we're going to be talking a lot about quite a complex solution set and industry that you are currently involved in. But it would be very helpful to give them some background, I think, as to a little bit of your career path.
Somewhat of a jungle gym. I think that is similar to everybody else, right? I actually started off as an electrical engineer. I thought that was going to be my path. And I started off at GE Healthcare, and they gave me that opportunity to be part of a leadership program where every 6 months you get to rotate across the business. And I think that opened up the opportunity to experience and learn new challenges really quickly. So you have to learn what that problem is, what's the problem statement, and then quickly pivot to a solution and execute on that. Most of those were more on the technology end. I think that's where my love for innovation and technology and digital started off. You're listening to what that complex problem is, and then you're trying to figure out what the ideal solution would be. And you typically have different, I'd say, stakeholders or different cross functional groups that you have to influence when it comes to driving a solution and navigating through that. And I learned a lot, absolutely learned a lot. It was 2 years, every 6 months you rotate. At the end of that, it definitely stirred up or accelerated my love for being part of understanding the end to end of a business. How is it run today? And how do you continue to improve and innovate and apply solutions? I learned a lot along the ways. I'd like to say it's my failures that have shaped me into who I am today. And the misses, you learn something from each of those, but also the successes you celebrate. And at that point, GE was very notorious in acquiring businesses, and they needed people who could translate a business problem and a business process and apply what it means from a technology. So I became somewhat of an integration lead.
Mm.
So leading the integrations of these businesses they were acquiring, another very different type of environment where you're not only dealing with identifying how you can integrate the business, but you're dealing with people's fears and concerns, right, on both ends, or more in the business that's being acquired. So how do you drive that change? How do you convince them that you have their best interests at heart, knowing fully well that there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity, and how do you create that clear path for them? Did that for a bulk of my career within GE, more in the M&A space, each time going in, assessing the current state, identifying what a future state would look like, and then creating that path and the plan. And that's where my love for going in and understanding what that unmet need is, listening first before you come up with what that solution is. Solutioning is always very easy, but you have to spend some time in really listening into what's that unmet need. That's where I spent most of my career at GE Healthcare. And at some point, I got tapped by KPMG, and they were looking to expand their deal advisory arm. And they were looking for folks who had M&A experience. And I decided, look, I've been in the healthcare space for so long. What better way to experience other industries, but then through consulting? And that was a great experience. It really was. My focus was mainly healthcare, but I got a chance to work with deals that were in I'd say the financial services, consumer products, luxury goods. So after KPMG, I decided at some point in my career, the traveling was great, but at that point, my family was growing bigger and I needed to be home a bit more. And so decided to come back into more of the strategic world. And rather than go back to healthcare, I went into financial services. So I was with a company called Hightower Advisors, similar integration M&A space, and I was there for about 3 years. Learned a lot too, and then at some point I figured I wasn't looking, But I touched base with one of my old mentors who used to work at GE and had told me about this company called Avantor Sciences. And I decided to take a look and I was curious. I love the mission statement of Avantor, and we provide mission critical products and services and solutions to life sciences, biopharma, the education space, from research and development all the way to production. So, identifying breakthrough science is something that I wanted to be a part of. I came into Avantor leading the strategy and marketing and digital organization. And I remember during that interview, the role started off as, I think, strategy. And when my hiring manager at the point talked to me and realized the various experiences that I had, they decided to combine the strategy, marketing, and digital piece to it just
Right.
because it was hard for them to find somebody who could apply both the strategy and then also have somewhat of a business customer minded focus, but also loves technology. So I thought this was like the best of all worlds for me, that the various parts of the business that I love to be a part of. And so it was the ideal role for me. And so I joined Avantor 4 years ago. And my role requires talking to customers, a lot of our customers in the biopharma, education, academia space, and healthcare, and just understanding what are the pain points in their labs and how can we at Avantor provide a service or solution that can help meet that unmet need? I know I said a lot. I told you it was a mouthful.
That's all right. It's first of all incredibly fascinating. So you're welcome to go on for another however long you would like. But secondly, I think it's also very relevant because not only did you talk about the companies that you're at, but also the roles and what you learned, starting out in a role where there was a lot of listening that had to get done on your part as you were doing the
Yes.
rotations. And as an engineer, when you come out of school, that's not something you're taught to do, and you're not even told to expect that. But
Yeah.
essentially, you're a problem solver. You're going to be doing calculations. You're going to be doing designs. You're going to be developing solutions. And even for engineers, listening is a very important skill, right?
Absolutely. You're spot on. You've got 6 months to really get your hands around an actual end-to-end business process, and then in between that 6 months, you have to come up with a solution and then execute. So you learn to be humble and listen first and learn, and then you now take a look at what are the options, but be very collaborative. Because in order for you to execute and be successful, you need that stakeholder buy-in. And how do you bring people along that journey? It's very important because without that, you can implement something and but the user adoption, if that doesn't happen, then it's not successful. And so you're absolutely right. My boss at the time, Susan Gordon Barker, who is a mentor of mine and continues to be, she led the program. She was an executive at GE. And at the point where I was done with the leadership program, I had the option to stay in a safe role versus this unknown in Salt Lake City, Utah, where there were
Mm.
complex challenges that needed to be solved. Nobody knew how to get there. And everybody else that was part of the program, everyone was like, dude, I will not touch this with a 10-foot pole, that saying that they always say. And she gave me the best advice and possible is don't run away from those challenges. It will only shape you into who you are in your career. And I thank her for that.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important lesson for both mentors and managers and leaders to be able to encourage people that they're working with to take those chances, to believe in themselves, even in the face of potential outcomes that aren't optimal, right? I don't want to use the word
Mhm.
failure because I don't think that even if they didn't work, it's not a failure, it's a learning experience in those cases. And I think that's a necessary understanding for you to have the courage to do
Yeah.
those difficult things or do things that you didn't anticipate.
Yes.
And that requires both that mindset of courage and curiosity, but also there's a psychographic there that something
Yeah.
drives you to go in and do new things. And another thing that I think about leading this huge services business for Avantor is it's about transformation. You used the word twice in your discussion, influence. And I very much appreciate that the subtlety around the difference between
Yeah.
influence and convincing, because what you're doing in influencing is you're being empathetic. You're helping them understand their world, and then you're applying some new information or some new logic or some new studies that help them understand something about their world that they didn't understand before. It's not about
Correct.
you and your technology and look at this great feature. That influence has to be an empathetic perspective. And I suspect that another reason you're so successful is that you are a very empathetic person. You put yourself in your customer's shoes or your team's shoes, and without even necessarily saying it this way to yourself, you probably start by thinking, what's it like for them?
Yeah. One thing to also add when you talk about the success, it's not just me. I think that the reason why I've been successful as the people around me and my team. I think I've been very fortunate to have individuals with that same mindset too, as well, that not afraid of change, right? Because if you are terrified of change and transformation, you won't survive, right? Because to your point, even when we get to the customers and talk about a solution similar to technology, right? It just evolves. What was relevant today isn't relevant tomorrow, and how do you continue to adapt and transform? And that's why my team, we have so much fun doing this, right? Because they are the same mindset too. Embrace the change, embrace the ambiguity, and love problem solving together. And so I'd love to say it's just me, but I'm only as good as my team. And I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by really strong, talented, empathetic as well, and curious. We're equally as curious, and you see us all together when we're talking about all these. We geek out, completely geek out. And then we have to roll ourselves back and be like, okay, hold on. Let's prioritize. Let's look at this as a phased approach. But we're all aligned with the same vision. And that helps too, as well as we talk to customers. But yes, yes.
And then transitioning into sort of this notion of meeting unmet needs, I think one of the things that a services business and a services role affords you is the flexibility of not having to fit a product into the answer, right?
Hmm.
So you're starting by understanding where you are and where you want to be, and then you have
Hmm.
a lot of flexibility in how to get there. But before you can do that, you have to differentiate between what the customer says they want versus what you determine they need, partially because of your industry experience and you've seen what's happened, and partially because of the characteristics you just described, your curiosity, your
Hmm.
integration of technology focus and understanding. And so you're bringing something to the table that they may or may not have that will alter their perception of what a solution looks like. And I think one of the skills you probably have developed in a very finely honed way over the years is to talk to customers about the problem more than the solution
Yeah.
and not get diverted when they tell you how to solve the problem.
Hmm.
Because I think you have the opportunity to not only help them meet the unmet need, but to help them discover the undiscovered need. So the unmet need might be declarative. They might say, we don't have enough people in our lab, and we're going to have to work with you to help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
There may be a completely undiscovered need that you reveal for them that changes the whole landscape about how that solution is brought to the table. And I think that's probably something you do innately, but you're helping customers change their perspective on even their own world. Mm.
100%. We like to reference the iPhone, and we didn't even think we needed that. No, nobody had any idea. And all we thought was just we needed a phone. And then all of a sudden, they're like, look at these. And it's just continued to take off. That's our mantra. We want to continue to, yes, we'll solve that immediate need. But oh, by the way,
Yeah.
here's based on what you've said and based on our experience. And we're fortunate because we have such a vast, I'd say, breadth of customers in the same industry and also external to other industries. Every customer, yes, nuances here and there. They all want to do the same thing. They all want to achieve the same piece, same goal when it comes to research and development, right? In production is they want to experience that next breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
Drug and accelerate science. And how do we give time back to scientists? So we hear the many variations and we also have them consider, have you considered, oh, by the way, we can solve this, but did you know that you need to think from an innovative perspective beyond what you're doing now? Here are the additional benefits. And it's well received because yes, great, you provided me with a solution, but then what are you doing with innovating with us? We'd love to see your vision and your roadmap to know that you're thinking about this space given the fact that we're somewhat industry experts, right? And what are you bringing to us that we can't see and that you've seen with other customers, you've seen with other experiences? And I think that's the value that we bring. We've learned a lot across our customer base. There's nothing under the sun that we haven't seen. Yes, a few here and there pop up once in a while, but all of those are always applicable across our customers because they're all experiencing the same thing.
Yeah. And I think that this is also an area where executives often struggle, particularly if they're transforming a business. I know your Avantor business is recently reconfigured into
Yes,
segments, and you're looking at the world a different way, in my opinion, more from the customer's perspective than an inside
correct.
out perspective, which is very encouraging, of course. But when you do those kinds of things, what you end up thinking about with respect to how you go to market is that you become a trusted advisor and consultant rather than somebody who's selling them something. They probably do buy quite a bit from you, but only because they trust you and that you have this knowledge and collaboration with them. And a lot of businesses struggle to integrate services into their offerings. You built a big pillar of an entire
Mhm.
service business because I think the requirement to develop that trust is to be product agnostic and get the customers to really understand. They probably hear it from everybody. Oh, we work with everybody, it's fine. But then at the end of the day, it just so happens that my solution or my product is the one you ought to use. And the developing that trust and building a true collaboration is probably the key to being successful. And that might be where our sort of competition element comes in because we have to authentically want to solve the customer's problem in the best way.
Gavin, you must have been in the room somewhere when we were writing our mission statement for the new lab
Mm,
solution segment, because one of the things we highlighted was trusted partner and
mm,
advisor. We shall, will continue to be, and 100%. Our solutions from a services perspective as well were vendor agnostic when it comes to managing the lab. That's why we have about 1,800 to 2,000 associates of our Avanto associates in the lab, partnering side by side. We've earned the trust and credibility because they know we will always put the interest of the customer first. The era of competition is over. It's coopetition because about a decade ago, we used to be like that, where it was only our solution. We either build it in-house, we get external to come in and build it in-house, but it has to be just us providing all the solutions for our customers. But we found out that you can't do it all. In order for you to solve the actual business customer need, it you all the vendors and all our industry participants and all the providers and every solution provider that's coming to that same customer, you have to come together and ensure that we identify where the partnership can be, because guaranteed we all can't do it all and there's synergies there. And the more we come together and identify how we can partner from a go-to market and provide that unified solution, it benefits the customer greatly. And that's all they're asking for. And they've been asking for that for a while. They're part of what today is there isn't a shortage of service providers. In fact, our customers have way too many. And they're like, who do I talk to? It's just so much for them. And if you stop talking about just your piece, but also talk about how you're collaborating with other service providers to provide you with that one enterprise solution, it's well received and it's almost refreshing to our customers that we're doing this, we're doing the partnership. So it's definitely competition, which is great to see.
I think it's great because I think it expands the market opportunity for everybody.
Hmm.
I don't think every senior executive understands that growing the pie part of the puzzles because
Yeah.
it is very difficult for companies that offer products or solutions to then have services businesses that recommend perhaps the competition or alternatives
Yeah.
in a way where that's antithetical to their DNA. And as you said, there's a big transformation that has to happen. But I think that the reason that it's successful and the reason the pie expands is because you are expanding the size of the value. In the past, everybody was competing around sort of the smaller elements, the customer was left to do the integration. The customer was
Mhm.
to make those decisions. And what was the unmet need in terms of the opportunity there from a business perspective is the value of helping them make those decisions and helping them run that part of their decision
Yes.
making and business. And there's value there. They'd rather spend money on that than time and hiring people and going through the learning process and all that. So what I think you've hit on is an analysis of the customer's value perspective. So where can we add value? And then you go out and you ask, and how do we do that best?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we've had customers provide feedback in terms of why they didn't go with one solution provider versus the other. And it's always, we're looking for a comprehensive
Mhm.
solution.
Yeah.
Yes, they responded to what we asked for in terms of just the basics, but where we value and will put a price on, and in fact, they've gone over price, is where the providers that offer a comprehensive solution, that
Yeah.
end to end. And that's usually not the case where it's just the provider. They've partnered with strategically with areas where they either have gaps to just make sure to the customer it's that one solution, and yeah, you can't put a price on that. The customers truly value that.
And I think that gets back to some of even the dimensions you've mentioned earlier, the time to science, for example.
Mhm,
To
mhm.
uncover for them an unmet opportunity or an undisclosed opportunity to reduce the time to science, they are more than willing to spend money that they hadn't budgeted or thought of to achieve that objective if all of that balance is in the right direction.
Interesting enough, part of our services organization, we do have business process consultants that do that. They just go in, more of a solutioning,
Mm,
and get a current state of the lab. And then they make recommended solutions, whether it's areas where they think they could be improved or just based on the experience. This is how you could optimize your lab. And those associates have done this so many times, right? And then the more you do, the more cases that they can leverage. So, yes, you're right. It's stepping back and providing that holistic. And in that case of the business process consultants, again, I think where we have the value is we are agnostic. It's all on behalf of the customer. Some of these solutions that we recommend could be Avantor, great. But if it's not the right one, for the customer, we will partner and identify other providers that can provide the right solution. So
and I think that is the delivery on your promise, your brand promise. Great brands make a promise, and then the customer experience matches that promise or exceeds it. And I think that's part of what you're delivering at the moment. I think lots of lessons. If you had to give some advice to young engineers or business folks coming into their careers based on what your path and your learning and your current expertise and all this wisdom that you've developed, what you would recommend for them?
yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say don't limit yourself just because you have a marketing background or an engineering background or math, etc. Don't limit yourself to just those roles that you think are relevant. I tell you, every role that you encounter has got a certain facet or nuance of what you've learnt in your field, and the rest you just learn along the way, right?
Mm,
You learn by leveraging the resources around you. You learn by failing, right? And trying it the first time, and then you could pivot. That's the only way that you can grow in your career. So don't limit yourself and don't be afraid of those challenges, those tough roles. I think it's almost like imposter syndrome. You're like, can I do it? I don't think I can. I don't think I'm capable. That never leaves you. Trust me, I never leaves you. So if you're feeling that, it's not going to leave you, but that shouldn't stop you from taking that role and again leveraging the resources around you. Listen, learn. You only get better and you only get that gain that experience as you go along the way. Nobody starts off being a professional from start. It's the experiences along the years that makes you grow and more seasoned.
I hope many people take that advice. And now, just as we close, if other executives are looking to build a services business that's as successful as yours, and they say, I want to be Tola
Oh
and I
God.
want business to be as great as hers. What advice would you give to executives about building a successful complex services business?
Yeah, that's a good one too. I would say that we you need to be willing to innovate quickly. And you need to learn quickly, like whether it is create somewhat of that incubator space as you think about services. People are afraid of if you build it, they will come. I think we've gone away from that. And I know from an executive standpoint, we're very wary of that. So if you can't wait for if you build it, they will come. I'd say start off in phases like a pilot. Identify whether it's a customer, whether it's a proof of concept, be willing and open to learn through that and then iterate over. I think for executives as well, I always say sometimes great can be the enemy of good, which goes
Mm,
back to the pilot and the
yeah.
proof of concept. In an effort to be great, you miss the opportunity to be good. I think we need to take those and seize those opportunities to create something good first, learn, and then you can evolve to great. If you can't get to great right away, as executives, we limit ourselves because we want perfection right away, and you miss that opportunity to make an impact to the customer.
Well, I think that impact to the customer is probably what drives you every day.
Mhm.
And it's been inspirational to be talking with you. I am so grateful for the
I'm
time
honored.
that you spent. It was such a privilege,
Right.
and I learned so much and very inspired by you, as I'm sure all of our listeners will be. I want to thank you so much, Tola. What a great pleasure it has been.
Thank you. I'm humbled and honored, and thank you, Gavin. I learn from you every day, so this has been exciting and inspirational for me too.